Hi, everybody, and welcome back. I'm super thrilled to introduce my close friends and co conspirators in many ways, Don.XYZ and Sammie Veeler. Don is a new media and internet artist producing web based interactive work and digital media tools since 2008. As a founder of New Art City, he aims to provide an accessible toolkit to all types of artists and create a connected online home for born digital artifacts. His personal artwork aims to discover and amplify aesthetics intrinsic to data formats, user interfaces, and the World Wide Web. He lives and works in Oakland, California. And we're also going to hear from Sammie Veeler. And Sammie Veeler is a multimedia artist and gallery director of New Art City, based in Los Angeles. And I will also say that Don played a super sick Algorave DJ set last night that I was really sad to miss. And so I have to shout out his very his multifaceted skill set. We're going to have a short talk from them, and the three of us will come back and we'll do a tour through the exhibition that we made together. And here they are.
Gotta get in the zone again. It's hard. There's like so many zones.
Woo!
Okay. Well, hello. I'm Don.XYZ with New Art City, and with me is Sammie Veeler. We're co-founders of New Art City, and we're here to talk to you today about what we do, why we do it, who we're building for, how you can get involved, and all of that.
Yeah, I mean, why don't you talk about yourself a little bit? Just like what was your background before you started with New Art City, and like what led you into it?
Okay. Well, I'm primarily an internet artist. I make websites and digital media art that usually ends up as some form of online content. And when coming up to the creation of New Art City, I was doing my MFA degree over at San Jose State University, working with the question of like, how do you show digital artwork in the best possible setting? And how do you uplift internet art to the exhibition standards of fine art? And these questions came head on with the like immediate need, once the pandemic hit, of showing art online, because all of the art exhibitions moved online. Everybody had to find a solution. So the questions that I was grappling with became ultra relevant. And the first thing that I did was just make a demo, a prototype, where you could just upload whatever media files you've got, and it renders them in 3D. And that proved to be like pretty useful. So we used it at San Jose State for the undergraduate show, and kind of got attention from there from local organizations. We worked with Kodame, and Gray Area was one of the first supporters with their Creative Code Showcase, and kind of have been building from there. And yeah, that's around the time that Sammie joined at New Art City as well.
Yeah, and that was sort of the point where Don had an inbox that was too full to keep up with, and also sort of manage building the product. And so my background was originally in sort of traditional technology, where I worked in all these different areas, just trying to sort of figure out how I might fit in, like, in the tech world. And I was sort of consulting with other people who had like MVP stage startups, which I think is just sort of a hilarious term when you think about what we're doing at New Art City, because it's so human here, where it's like so community oriented. So I feel like I just picked up right where Don left off, where he could sense that building a community around the tool was necessary, and I had all of these sort of skills and interests to do it. So we started by making a Discord, and it's over 300 artists, educators, and curators from all around the world, many of whom who have met there, who are, you know, neighbors a couple of miles away, or neighbors across their country, or neighbors, you know, around the world. And sort of helping cultivate partnerships and sort of helping support artists individually has been sort of my core focus at New Art City.
Yeah, just to speak a little bit about what New Art City is, if you've never checked it out, it's a website. So you can go to our homepage, newart.city, and you'll see like 70 plus shows that have been launched over the past year and a half. And there's no downloads or anything. You just jump into the show, and then you can navigate it in 3D and see other people who are there with you as well. in this 3D gallery experience really wouldn't be possible without 3JS, which is this amazing software library that lets you render 3D graphics in the browser. And a lot of what we built is really just customizing the examples that their community has provided. So it's really about making a user interface for 3D graphics on the web, which is kind of complex. And we're trying to make that accessible and approachable for artists who may not have a coding background. So you can upload kind of whatever media files that you've got, whether that's a 3D file, an audio, a video, an image, and arrange them using our drag and drop editor. So it's like this content management system layer that lets you manage your 3D assets in space. And it takes this task of building a 3D website, which would have taken weeks or even months, down to something that can take days or even hours.
And indeed, that's sort of exactly what happened with me when I started using New Art City. I was in the middle of formalizing a sound art portfolio based out of sort of 5 years of work that I had been doing in private and was ready to sort of start calling art. And I sort of hit a wall where I was thinking, like, okay, I don't really want to release songs. How else can I make like sound installations? Like, geez, I'm gonna have to get an MFA. And so as soon as I found out that Don was making this tool, I got a room and I immediately started placing sounds around the space. And it was just brilliant to be able to crossfade between the different sounds. And so, I mean, insofar as anybody with a computer has all these images and video on their computer, just like random screenshots, and the internet is just like an endless trove of these things, it was quite easy for me to just start painting really quickly in the space to sort of create architectures that felt like they matched the sounds that I was making. And it really just opened up my own work in this spectacular way. So I felt kind of, I feel compelled to sort of help share this with other people, because I feel like it's a really powerful tool for artists who already have some tooling experience. But it's even more exciting, I think, to open a space for people who might not see themselves as artists in the same way to express themselves with the images and other multimedia that sort of surround them at all times. So we've been in kind of an endless beta for the last 18 months. We've been in private beta, which means that anybody who wants to show on New Art City has to submit a proposal, which can be as short as 4 sentences, and we tried to make it really accessible in that way. But the reason why we want to do this is because we wanted to talk to every single person who is showing in the gallery, the same way you would if you were like leasing out space in an endless, art factory. And so this meant that we could select and see, like, okay, these are people who have institutional power and clout that can be redistributed, and these are people whose work might have been marginalized in other spaces, who we like really want to support. And so we've been really focusing on developing those connections by hand and like working with institutions that really want to support our mission. And sort of, we really aim to open a space where the hierarchies of the past are no longer present.
So a big part of why we're doing this is to create a space that's really a level playing field for artists. So many technology platforms amplify the problems created by like systematic injustice, and we really want to address that by making sure that the people that we show and uplift are those who didn't have as many opportunities to share their voice and their vision and their artwork before. So that's the kind of curation goals you'll see in the gallery and the artwork that we produce and put out and fund with our commissions.
Yeah, so I think Don touched on like what platforms do, and that's why we differentiate ourselves and sort of insist that we're a toolkit and not a platform, because this is a ground up decision to avoid turning users into products. And so if you compare us to a platform, we move quite slowly, but if you compare us to a museum, and we do have over 30,000 artworks in our collection, all owned by the individual artists themselves, then we move absurdly fast. On our homepage alone, there are about 65 public shows, but that is sort of like an iceberg. There are many more that aren't actually published on the homepage that were produced sort of with or without our help. But it enables a tremendous velocity, and it starts to approach, I think, the velocity with which images actually move in the world, or at least gives curators a fighting chance to sort of respond thoughtfully in a reasonable amount of time. You know, there were multiple shows that engaged the conversation of NFTs like while that was happening on New Art City, because you can move so quickly. But yeah, truly at the end of the day, we're hoping to take this sort of nexus of power and privilege and continue to redirect it to people who are disadvantaged by structural injustice.
So in our first year and a half of working on New Art City, we've been growing at a very deliberately slow pace because we want to make sure we do it right, bring in the people who are going to build a good community, and make sure it really works for them. Make sure we're actually solving real problems for artists and creating a tool that is helpful. And we're getting to a point now where things are pretty solid. People are making really great shows pretty much all the time. Like almost every week there's a new show coming out. And we want to kind of widen this doorway for artists to come in, individual artists. So we're going to be launching our first public beta that allows individual artists to sign up and support New Art City financially, but also support the mission and be one of the first people to join.
Yeah, and it's like when you join the community, it's still like, it's not like a platform where we're like rabidly trying to attract users. We're adding 100 licenses at a time in the beta, and we have 300 people in our Discord because like we're sort of aware of the effects of flooding communities, because like we have like an actual culture of mutual aid that we want to continue to grow and cultivate, and sort of rapid growth is kind of anathema to that kind of practice. And so it's really not an understatement to say that if you join New Art City in this beta, then you'll have a real sort of impact on the path forward.
I really want to thank Gray Area for being like a dedicated supporter. They've done a lot of their Creative Code showcases, their immersive shows, and this is the second Gray Area Festival exhibition that we're doing with them. So it's really cool to have a local partner who's so supportive of our mission, and we're really excited for you all to see the exhibition that's premiering with the festival today.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And we're back with Don and Sammie Veeler. Thank you guys so much for being here. What a great, I mean, first of all, you know, no thanks be needed for being your partner. I love New Art City, and it's just so amazing the access.
And we're back with Don and
sorry,
Sammie
I've got the
Veeler.
live stream with the delay kind of playing behind me, so sorry about that. But you know, it's so amazing to see this platform develop and provide such an amazing toolkit for artists. You know, I first came in contact with the project, Don, when you were first starting out on it. And I was starting my own virtual gallery, Silicon Valley. And I wanted to create online exhibitions. I didn't have a ton of technical know-how, and I just needed some support in the toolkit to do that. And I created a show called Dismal Sessions with Most Dismal Swamp in New Art City, and that was one of the best experiences ever. It was just so amazing to get to work with a group of people for the first time and create something online together that was so interactive, so engaging, and it created a place where people could meet, and that was so meaningful for me. And it's so interesting to know that you really dedicatedly do not describe as a platform. You describe as a toolkit. And the one thing that, and this is not just to play devil's advocate and to kind of test the waters a little bit, I think a lot about governance of platforms, and particularly as we move into crypto. We were talking to Kia Kreutler this morning about governance models for blockchain operations. And I'm wondering, as a toolkit, how, like, of course you don't want the tool to be put into the wrong hands or employed in a way that's damaging or harmful. And normally when you think of a platform, I know this is like very contested by the United States Supreme Court, but a platform is meant to also have some sort of responsibility or some duty to the content that's prepared there and kind of the results of what happens with the technology they've created. And I'm wondering, how did the two of you balance that access and openness with also and control that you need to have in order to keep the members of the marginalized communities who are using the platform safe?
I'm so glad that you asked that question. Yeah, it gets at like a really good nuance where, I mean, one thing I was observing today even is like there's a way in which platforms try to solve sort of social and societal problems by hard coding rules. And I think there's something really, it's kind of like the way that games can be built in New Art City is that rules aren't hard coded. What happens is in the mind. And so like the community aspect of what New Art City is why we insist on calling it a platform, right? Because it's the technology is only one small part of what makes it magic. And it truly is magic. And sort of the way that the community was founded in the beginning, I think this is a great way to talk about output field, is like, it was really small. It was like, it was our team and it was me. And we started bringing in some people who were using it. And then we brought in people like Viv, who runs Output Field, and they view themselves as a placeless coalition. And I met them through their research, just talking to artists and facilitating one-on-ones, just to understand, sort of asking broad questions about like what's frustrating and like what's frustrating about publishing work, simply because it was proving to be an end in itself. And so what we did was like establish norms and sort of hypotheses for how a community could function before, people got to the party. And so we had all of this time and like interactive ability to create like an actual community spirit, which is like, if you think of the Endless September on BBS servers way back when, right? The idea was that servers would have this culture and norms that developed because there were a lot of people interacting with one another. And as you get floods of undergraduates who have no experience with it, the norms, like they can't generate roots. And so like what we're trying to do is focus on the human element. And it's like we haven't had a single issue, I don't think, with like problematic behavior in our Discord. And it's like Scawanati was talking about, where it's like, you're worried about like who's on the other side of the screen. And it's like, wait, I already know, like Don already knows all these people. It's like, there's always 6 degrees of separation. It's just amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, just to carry on that. I mean, the community ethos that that New York City is rooted in is so rich. I mean, your Discord is such a wonderful community where like I've gone and I've asked questions when I couldn't figure something out, and people have helped me, or I've shared ideas with other people, and I've been an active community member on the Discord for a long time, and I've never witnessed anything that even comes close to something that might be considered questionable. There's not even anything that needs to be trigger warning. It's just a really lovely space, and so I'm wondering how you cultivate that sense of community and how you nourish it, not only through the tools that you make available, but also through the space outside of the toolkit that you bring people into.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think it's really about just growing slowly and deliberately and leading by example. We want people in the community to feel empowered to help each other out, and we try to make all of the information available, make sure everybody can get the answers to the questions that they have, either directly from us, and by us answering questions that come up kind of like as quickly as possible, other people learn and they feel empowered to also answer questions. Like everybody helps each other out because that's just what we try to do in the space of the community.
And I think that extends to the way opportunity travels in New York City as well. I mean, so like an amazing example of this type of like chemical reaction, it's like another really cool thing that we do with Output Field as our relationship evolves is we dedicate 20% of our revenue to commissions. And so they are doing the work of curating marginalized artists in a way that's like really, really respectful. And so it's a pleasure, and they're really doing us a favor by letting us divert resources to these projects that we care about, because curation takes a lot of energy, and like we're focusing on building a tool and a community at the same time. So bringing in people who have been so instrumental in the community building and diverting resources to them is kind of a no-brainer. And so the chemical reactions that happen are people like Wade see shows like Hisu's, and they say, holy shit, she must show in gray area, right? And that happened because we wanted to have a residency program where we brought in an artist and basically gave them the same type of service that we gave you to build this, where it's like, what's your dream? How can we make this happen? And so Hisu wanted to build a digital shrine, and we thought, holy shit, that's like the coolest thing ever. Let's give her some money so she can do it.
That's amazing. And I mean, yeah, it's so true. Like I go to like basically every show at New York City because I just love to see what everybody's up to. And I remember I know I know her offline. We've been friends for a couple years, and I didn't even know that she was doing this, and the link came up and I was like, oh my God. And I ran there immediately, and like what she was doing was so connected to this idea of worlding protocol and creating space and connecting to ancestral, family, traditional, ancient trajectories, is so clear in the work. And that's something that happened organically from you guys creating space to build those worlds, to do the work that we're kind of theorizing and talking about and conceptualizing here at Worlding Protocol. And so as part of that vision, you work so closely with the community. I mean, obviously we've been talking about that, but also through really distinct collaborations with different community members, different curatorial groups. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how that works, and some of the kinds of synergies that you've got, not to use a corporate word, but that you've got kind of going on with other actors in the space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so much of this is about community building and letting people come in. So giving a clear path for people to get in touch and send us their ideas, which is just a proposal form on our homepage. Anybody can hit that link and tell us what they want to do. And we send out space to almost everybody who asks, because we want to bring in the people who want to make good art and like reach a global audience with it. And the new media art community is very small. Like the fine art community and the art community in general is small, and new media art is just a little sliver of that. So like Sammie said a minute ago, like we kind of have like a few degrees of separation from most of the people. And yeah, it's really great to just kind of like connect people and get the people in who will make the connections deeper for everybody involved.
And we learned so much from our collaborations with individual artists like Hisu and institutions like Format Festival, who sort of force us to think outside of what we've done before and sort of solve problems for these things that haven't had that much like history in virtual space. Like installing a virtual biennale is something that or shows of that magnitude virtually is like a really specific type of challenge. And we've had the blessing to work with a lot of different people who had like really interesting ideas about sort of how to do it. And so each time we collaborate with somebody, we get more questions that we get to answer. It's like Don gets more problems to solve.
Yeah, and each collaboration is really, really a learning experience, because people will come up with, we kind of like understand the needs of an online exhibition, but each time that we scale up, the needs become more complex and more nuanced. Like with these huge exhibitions and like the Gray Area Festival, like we're building all of this infrastructure to support these larger exhibitions, because we really started with just the single room model. It's like, okay, you're an artist, you can have a room, have a space, upload your pieces, and that's that. And then it grew into, okay, we need more than one room. Some artists will do a group show, or some artists will just have so much work that they need to connect all of these rooms together. And we've built that into a project structure where a project contains multiple rooms. And we're also like, that's also not enough, because we're working with bigger organizations like universities. And how does a university manage all of their projects? Well, they have an organizational account where they can administer all of the projects and all of the students who are in all of the rooms. So it's really about like these like increments of like taxonomies, like rooms, projects, organizations, and like getting all of this working, but also like still focusing at the core level, like solve problems for artists. And yeah.
And I think what's interesting too is that, even though you're using the word solve here, like what you're creating doesn't feel like solutionism. It feels like something that's a constantly evolving, adaptable like framework or structure that helps to undergird something. And it's not so much a problem, but it's like, hey, we need to build sideways. What kind of, support beam do we need to do that? Let's make it happen. And that's something that makes it the whole platform and the community surrounding it, as well as the unbelievable outputs. I mean, I've spent hours and hours and hours just going through different shows, watching different pieces. I mean, it's just so rich. And I think, how do I ask this question? I got to think about this for a second. Where do I'm going to say this instead. What do you see the trajectory of New Art City to be at this phase? We've got a couple, for instance, we've got a couple questions in the audience. One coming from Digital Coleman asking, what is the income stream? And what do your costs look like? And what does sustainability look like for the platform? I'd love to learn a little bit more about your trajectory and also, what folks can do to support you guys in this initiative, because it's, I've drunk the Kool-Aid basically, everyone, and I think that I want to get as many folks on board as possible.
And many people have, and that enthusiasm is just like such a delight to us. Like, I mean, the way that we've made money so far is like meeting people who have institutional power, who hear what our mission is and say, hell yeah, we want to support that with money. And so we are able to make these things for them, and they're basically paying for our time, because it's like, it'll take us up to 80, 100 hours to put together an exhibition, and so we get knowledge, we get clout, and we also get money in return for that. And that's like, it's kept us afloat. And a couple of like people like Format Festival were like huge lifelines. People like Gray Area, huge lifelines. But yeah, I mean, we have a lot of other ways that we're like working on. I think Don can speak to those.
Yeah, we're about a year and a half in since the start of the project, and honestly, we're still laying groundwork. Like, this is not the final form, because we're making something that we want it to be as easy as possible for artists to use. Anybody, even if you don't have technical experience. Right now, it's really helpful if you do have some technical tooling experience in these digital media artifacts to upload, but we want it to be even easier and more accessible to anybody. And making these processes like optimization for web like significantly easier, or built it right into the toolkit where you wouldn't even have to think about what like format your file is, or if it's too big or what. You just upload it and it changes it into a web-friendly format. Like, making these pathways like extremely accessible is a huge part of our goal. And also a huge part of our goals that we're like looking at solutions for is how to get artists paid. Because like, as we know, the digital media art historically has been very hard to monetize because of infinite replicability, all of that. I mean, things have changed in the past year with that. But we're looking at all sorts of ways of like making these sustainable economies work for artists. And like I just said, we're in the groundwork and infrastructure phase of that. But as artists come onto the toolkit, they will in the future be seeing ways for them to earn money and like support themselves as artists using the tools that we create.
Absolutely, it's like it's a nexus of power and creativity where like it's this like tight-knit collection of people who have these skills in like a new field that we call like virtual curation, that encompasses not only sort of bringing works in conversation with one another and developing relationships with artists, but understanding the various affordances of virtual space in a way that can help artists like transmit their work in a site. There are many people in our network who are getting really good at this, and we're hoping we can sort of extend them outward. I think pragmatically also, we're working on a public beta, which means that people can sign up and pay a monthly subscription fee, which is partially to get access to the tool, yes, but it's also like, I think there are many people in our community who feel a sense of like responsibility to like, and they like want to help support us. And so it's an opportunity finally for people who have that affinity to do so.
I mean, this is really exciting to hear about this new model, because, you know, I think, you know, I think because so many people like myself included, you know, are probably chomping at the bit to try to support you in different ways. And I imagine this is going to unlock all different kinds of experiences and ways for people to be involved in shaping how the platform develops. But I mean, not to drill in too much, but just, you know, the sustainability aside, and technically, you know, kind of where do you want New Art City to go, and what do you, in 5-10 years from now, what would you want it to represent to the artist community, and what's your vision for what the platform will look like?
Gotta be present today. It's like we can dream and we have some ideas, but like I'm really, really committed to like being here for artists in the way that we can in this moment. It's like, because there are lots of people who say one day we'll make lots of money and we'll give it to you. We're like, fuck that. We have money. We got to give it back. And so like, yeah, like I really want it to be more social. I want to be able to gather there in ways that like are really hard to do in these spaces that are owned by platforms. It's just like building community on Instagram is fucking impossible. And like I really want a place where like your data isn't a product, where you can actually just breathe, and where your communication belongs to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like to put it kind of briefly, just say that we want to create an online home for digital art like the world has never seen before. We want to create a place where digital artists feel welcome and at home, and have a place for their work that stands up to the exhibition standards of the fine art world and the future of art.
Yeah, and this extends to like archiving and preservation and portfolio, but also things that have been lost in the digital age, like correspondence. Like one of my dreams is like to be able to actually just keep my like letters and like communication with these wonderful contemporaries that I share in a way that's preservable. I had another thought, but I think I lost it.
That's okay. Another thing that I want to ask you about, because this is something that I've been kind of whispering about with, other new media artists and curators, the one roadblock that I potentially see is just the kaleidoscopic array of protocols and file formats that, the 3D design space is currently like inundated by. I mean, there's a million different file types, and on the first hand, and they all kind of do different things. There's different protocols that, for instance, 3JS versus a different kind of WebGL might use in order to display an object in 3D on the web. And intercompatibility is something that I've been really, thinking a lot about, particularly having just built a show in New Art City, receiving files in one version, having to totally remake them in order for them to work on in something that loads in not like 3 hours, or turns off Wi-Fi for your entire block. And so, I'm wondering how you, in thinking in looking towards the future, how do you approach these issues?
Yeah, these file format problems are things that us as exhibition designers, like all the people who are building in New Art City or even building for the web, is a consideration. Like, you've got to get your files into a web-friendly format. But honestly, this is a problem that computers can solve. Like, this is something that can be automated. Like, knowing which type of file format to convert it to is like, you shouldn't have to know that. Like, the idea is like upload whatever you want, and like whatever like manual processes you'd have to do to get it into the right format, like that will be handled in the future by just the tools on our server. So
I think when you think, or I think there's something about publishing on the web that maybe it's an interesting nuance, right? Because you can build really, like, Unity is a fantastic example of this. It's like you can build a whole video game on your home computer now, which is like it's kind of like the same quantum leap that the Amiga created in the 80s. It's just like spectacular. But getting those pieces out to people who might not have as nice a machine as you, it's very, very difficult. Archiving and preserving something like that, very, very difficult. And then when you think about something like Blender, where like I cut my teeth making stuff specifically to publish on the web, and then I started investigating ways that you could use Blender to do all sorts of other things that weren't actually possible to publish on the web. And then I arrived at this problem that so many artists have, where like I have a piece that's really, really cool, but I can't put it right on the web. But this is essentially the same problem you face in physical space, right? I can't show my virtual flag in physical gray area. I would have to make a render and put it on a screen, or figure out some other like wonky way to like make it cool in physical space. But you're transforming an artifact to a site, and each time you show an artwork, it's always site specific, of course. And so I think the human element of figuring out how to publish for the web has really distinct benefits, which is that it's archivable and preservable, and it provides a maximal amount of access that's completely impossible with physical space. Because we say like accessibility is intersectional, where it's like, yes, there are physical impairments, and there's also the sort of quality of your machine, or your geography, or like your like technical ability, right? All of these things really matter. And so we offer one flavor of virtual exhibition that really tries to maximize those things. And we have, Don is amazing at building tools that make it easier and easier to do the things that we were having trouble with, or that are difficult now, yes. And I think what we're also building is this beautiful like bank of knowledge where all of these people have different approaches to making an exhibition. And that makes us stronger in different ways.
That's an interesting, yeah, totally. And it's also, I'm also a firm believer of like, maybe, by building something that works, by making something that is useful to people, that makes them happy, that allows them to open up different pathways, you attract folks. And, again, like Adon was saying earlier, you lead by example. And, I would be shocked if more people, once you see New Art City, you kind of feel like you have to make a show there. And, this show, the diorama show, was one where it was a ton of artists who'd never encountered the platform before that we showed for the first time. And they're all like, wow, oh my gosh, like maybe I want to do something. Oria Harvey and Rhoda Warner in the show, they co-collaborated and built the space together. Both of them having just tried it for the first time. They were so inspired by its capability for, co-authorship of the space that, they ended up creating something totally different than what we had originally planned on. And that's, a beautiful kind of synthesis that just happened organically. I think that what did I want to ask next? I think that, if you have any advice for other kinds of platforms trying to offer tools for artists, like what do you want to see more from the industry? What do you want to see more from different companies and different platforms, and even from different curators who are building in this space? And kind of what would you want to say to them?
You're doing great, honey. I mean, we're just so delighted to be in a community, because like I said, we're only one flavor of virtual exhibition, and we enable you to make a lot of different types of things. But like, I don't know, meeting Peter Wu is so wonderful, right? Because like we're both so inspired by things like Myst, and we're like really interested in world building, and he approaches it in this way that's much more sequential, and the way that he gets to pay attention to curation is just like it's so inspiring, right? So I think like there are so many ways to approach, I mean, solo shows, another great example. There's so many ways to approach showing work online, and we don't want to be the only one. Just like, yeah, I think it's just so great that there are all these different ways to think about
it. Totally. And I think that it is exciting to see what's going on. I mean, I've been really excited by stuff happening in Mozilla Hubs. I've been really excited by, things that are happening even in places like Decentraland or CryptoVoxels or Minecraft or, any of the other kind of multi-user environments or game environments that are available right now. I don't think I I don't think I have any too many more questions for you guys. I think I want to go like show people the show.
Yeah.
At this point, I think that's a better way to
Can't wait
talk
to see
about
it full of
it.
people.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Wade, and thanks so much for
thank
all
you,
of
Wade.
your work on this exhibition. I know you, of all the people, put in so much time into this, coordinating all of the artists, getting all of the artworks, and all of the speakers. Just want to say like huge congrats to you, and thanks so much.
Boundless energy, yeah, and
you know,
incredible generosity.
I'm really good at doing admin, but you know who was really instrumental in doing this were Nikki Selkin and Victoire Pumadere on the
Big
Great
ups
Area
to Nikki
team.
and
Nikki
Victoria.
has been decimating models for weeks. Victoire has been listening to every crazy request. I'm like, I want an ice floor, but an ice floor that looks like this, you know, and making that happen and realizing kind of the vision. And so it came together really, really beautifully. And we couldn't have done it without Nikki and Victoire. Thank you guys so much. And Joy, who created our exhibition graphic and our identity for the show, and who's been helping me in framing the text and getting the word out about this. So couldn't have done it without everybody. And so with that, I'm gonna pull up the show. Let's dive in. Let's go there.
Come with us.
Yeah, everybody can come with us, please. If you're in the audience, please go to newart.city/show/diorama. I just dropped it into the chat, and you can find us in there. We'll be represented by little green triangles. There's a chat in there. You can feel free to chat directly in there. I'm not going to be looking at the stream chat because I'm going to be in the show. So yeah, come through with us as we dive in. So to start us off, I wanted to just, say a couple words before we go in. I wanted to say a couple words about the curation of the show and kind of where it was coming from and what we were aiming to do. This show really aimed to replicate the diorama exhibiting technique that's been employed by museums and galleries for centuries. This installation particularly was trying to offer a new kind of phenomenology that critiques and expands upon the material forms of the very simulated exhibition format, which is something that I think also really aligns with what New Art City has been doing too. I mean, Sammie, in the spaces that you build in the show, you constantly are being self-referential and trying to break the platform itself as you're building it. And so I think that this thinking through different kinds of exhibiting formats, the limitations, the possibilities is a really rich way for us to start. And just building off of that, the diorama itself has been a really damaging, it has been both a extremely damaging and an eye-opening exhibiting technology since it became hundreds of years ago. We see patriarchal, racist, colonialist stories being concretized in dioramas all the time, or part.
Hello?
With that a little bit too, and the kind of and the critique, that we might have over these spaces. So that's really what this is all about. And all of the artists in the show, and now I'm going to share my screen and properly jump in. All of the artists in the show were really thinking through a lot of these topics. They're doing world building, they're creating universes, they're making things happen, and they're building it on their own. And but while we can exhibit many of the things that a world, we can't actually create a whole world. All richness a world. Is that serves as a portal into the world itself. So as you move through the show, each artwork, and they have portals linked into them, so you can through the portal go into any of the worlds that we have helped to install. I feel like we haven't built the world; we've facilitated other folks' worlds. And that's
filtering in artifacts from the other worlds, right? Because we're talking about how we're acknowledging the fact that this is like a window into something bigger than itself. And so the same principle. I mean, it's kind of a common thing that we do with the lobby spaces is try to bring a representative artifact from each show to go with its portal, and then try to sort of establish a site that can bring them into conversation with one another.
I'm sorry. I was just told I'm getting a little bit of lag, so I'm pausing for a second to close some programs, and hopefully get a slightly better connection so that the show is coming through a little bit more clearly for everybody. Just one moment. But yeah, absolutely. And something else that I think is really important is that even though we can't create the world, maybe we can still give these works context that feels native, that feels, like the natural habitat of where this work is born. Because I think that, a lot of the critique of online exhibitions over the past, particularly since the pandemic started, was that they're limiting, that they reduce, something that's meant to be multidimensional to something that's flat screen, that don't use the affordances of digital material in ways that, avails the, good representation of this work. So that's something that, we wanted to explore in this show as well, and to unpack, and figure out if we can do something in a slightly, in a better way, in a way that kind of leads into that. And so I'm going to start off, and I'm going to go here first because we were just talking to her, so I think it's going to be fresh in everybody's mind. We're going to hop into A Slice of Sky World by Skawanati. And here we have the celestial tree, the tree that she was discussing. It's the tree that lights the world. And again, this comes from her machinima piece, She Falls for Ages, which we've just heard the mythology of previously. And as you can see here, we've also got the canisters that she was talking about, where the blossoms are that light the world are being generated. And this is a really nice space to just come and chill out in, and just take a moment, just take a breath. Sammie, I know you collaborated quite closely with Skawanati to make this kind of set from her machinima film possible. Can you tell me a little bit about like the collaboration process as you were helping her to install this?
Oh, such a delight. Victoire helped take the model that was created in Second Life and get all of the flowers onto the trees. And then I passed it off to me, and I figured out how to get all of the colors right for the flowers. And it was one of the fun things that I get to do is sometimes we don't have a 3D model. The canister was like relatively easy just to create in Blender. And so I saw a picture of it, and then I just copied it. And then I had seen these benches in a different picture of her work, and I thought they were so cool. And I loved the way that the light came off of the little pylons. And so I just popped those in there to see what Skawanati thought. But I mean, it's just so lovely to be able to just like sit with an artist and say like, okay, because like I had a different floor. So we just could go back and forth and just like cut some shapes and move some things around. And yeah, so it was really nice to be able to just sort of quickly try to like, with as much reverence as possible, take what was in Skawanati's mind and translate it here.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's wonderful just to be here with the tree, because that's also something that, is really special about going to AbTech and going to that world, is you can go and you can sit by the tree and you can, be there in its true native habitat. And so I encourage everybody to click here, and you can go directly to AbTech Island through this link. And so again, this diorama is just a portal into Skawanati's much larger world.
I think it was kind of funny. Like she noted that you can't actually sit on the benches, and I said like, well, why not? Like you're already sitting. It's like you go sit above, you go above it, and you choose to be sitting. And in this way, like the rules of New Art City are not hard coded.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Before we go into Hisu's room, Sammie, I want to talk to you a little bit about your exhibition design, because you are the architect of this space, this lobby space. And so I was really thinking about dioramas and natural history museums and colonial histories and what we could do to push back against them. And you came back with this unbelievable space. So tell us a little bit about what you were thinking and kind of the design process there.
Yeah, I mean, I think because like I started just painting shapes because it was kind of hard for me to conceptualize without seeing what was actually going to be in the show, like how the space should look. And so I was sketching around sort of like spaces that looked like art galleries that then like moved or morphed. And I built a space sort of around those. And as the work started filtering in, the first thing that really inspired me was looking at dirigibles of Denali and there was this really cool like transparent tent over a whole city, and I made one of those in Blender. And I brought that into the space, and sort of slowly but surely I'm thinking of, and like there were themes that we saw of like oceans and also like deserts, and so I was trying to like collapse these landscapes on one another. And so I started with a big forest and with some trees that were moving around. And then we had the water, which really sort of nested everything. And then I realized it was the forest was really big and it was really cool to explore it. But I think one of the pitfalls with building a lobby space is that you can make it really huge and explorable, but then it's challenging to actually find where all of the artifacts are located or all the portals are located, even though you can see them in the blocker. So I took care I miniaturized it so then you could have the forest right next to the desert and put them in these interlocking dioramas, which means that it looks relatively expansive and you can't see everything all at once, but you're within about 15 seconds of all of the portals that you need to go to if you want to go into another room. And then out in the forest, we installed all of the works that live in the lobby space.
Yeah, so just to note that, not every artwork, ports to its own world. We kind of created a sculpture garden out here where you see work from Sister Lady Bianca, Julie Chang, and Tabitha Rosaire, as well
That's
as
the
Huntress
second time Tabitha's piece that specific piece has been shown in New Art City.
Well, it's an amazing one. And I will say that, we were really, we had a really ambitious goal for this show. And there are going to be a couple changes coming. We have a couple artworks to insert. We're still kind of working out a few rough details. Some of the artists are changing. So this show may develop and evolve a little bit over the coming weeks. So we encourage you to come on back. And who knows, I'll probably end up trying to throw some kind of virtual after party because I love dumb stuff like that.
It's so cool that we can just keep pushing changes after it launches.
Yeah. We just wanted it to be good enough for launch, but we're going to keep working on it a little bit and adding some details. And since we were talking about the tent city just now, I'm going to hop into Nathan Schaefer's room to show the dirigibles of Denali project. And so you can see the kind of we just saw the tent city inspiration, and so these cities are. They were originally augmented reality models that were incorporated into Nathan's comic book series of the same title, Dirigibles of Denali, and they're kind of related to the Wintermoot multiverse, so to speak, that are created through Nathan's comic book worlds that tell the stories of Indigenous superheroes and Indigenous people as they combat these, as they work with and through kind of cyberpunk narratives. This one particularly being these models, which are proposed models for dome cities in Alaska. And these are all real proposals that were conceptualized at the time that became incorporated and that were never realized, and then Nathan incorporated into the narratives of the stories that he was telling with the Indigenous communities in Alaska. And so there's a whole rich lore that accompanies all of these works. Again, they're entire worlds. And so I encourage folks to just kind of take a peek at this entryway, but really go through the portal, go through the mist into the spaces, to the full worlds that have been created. I mean, here you can see the tent city, and there's just so much detail in here. Nikki Selkin has spent so much time getting these ready because they weren't in web ready format. They were really in augmented reality format, and there's so many tiny little bits and bobs in all of these environments. And of course, we had to pose them in their native habitat of Alaska. So we kind of looked up some mountain models and tried to create the landscape of of the state. So go and check this one out. I'm going to just jump back into the lobby. We were talking about, Hisu's work too, the Le Musum Digital Shrine. So I'm going to go into her room next. And folks who are with me, this one's a little bit, it's actually not that heavy. I was going to say this one loads pretty good. But yeah, here we are in Hisu's, a 3D scan of Hisu's studio in Berkeley. And we have some little homey bits from her studio, these Choco Chimps cereal box and this fluffy floating cat. Just look at the texture on that; it's so beautiful. And we really get this really rich fur texture. I have no idea how she was able to squeeze all of these polygons in here. Sammie, do you want to talk a little bit about her process? Because I know that you were involved in this, and this is like somewhat of a groundbreaking show, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, first of our residency program for sure. I mean, like, I don't know, her work is definitely groundbreaking in general. This is actually her current apartment, and that's her partner next to Lemusum and her. So she's like sitting at her computer where she actually built this. And so
meta.
Yeah, we love it. I mean, like, her practice is so, like, her website, Lemusum. I think it's called lemusum.com. I need to double check that. But it's like, it's an archival practice in the first place, right? She has an archive of each of the avatars she made of her female ancestors. And she has an archive of all of the spaces that she's lived in or that are significant to Lemusum, like her studio at Berkeley, which was used as a shrine. And so she had the assets already, and it was our job to sort of help her figure out how to make them publish in a web format so you could actually walk around them rather than just like look at them as inert artifacts. So it was really cool to sort of, because like this other part of her practice is so beautifully documented, it was great to sort of help her think through some other ways that she can sort of bring these different sort of sites of memory into conversation with one another in a way that was more like slippery. And I think one of the other really cool things is like, because co-presence is one of the things that we do, it's going to continue to be a site of ritual. So when you go into Lemusum Shrine, you can see that they did a ritual on Chuseok, which is the like, I think it's the like fall festival in Korea. And so they had a potluck, and then they 3D scanned all of the people who were at the potluck, and then they got it all into New Art City. So it's a virtual offering, and you can see Lemusum, which is the sort of, I wouldn't want to call her a god, but she's this sort of like sublimated form of her like generational identity next to all of herself and all of her female ancestors. And I mean, she's really, really talented with working with 3D scans, because that's like really central to her practice. And what we figured out is that the image textures that go on these are usually really, really high. And once she was able to start reducing the size of those, the work got a lot easier. Like decimating is something that we definitely needed to do to some of the models, and there's also some like, I don't know, nerdy stuff like quantizing that like Benny figured out. But really, we just like sat with her every week, say like, okay, conceptually, where are you at? Like technically, where are you at? And then like our whole team would just sort of problem solve. So yeah, it was like really nice to be able to give like a lot of attention to it.
Yeah, I love this space. I've spent a lot of time exploring in here. And it's just, I mean, it always makes me hungry when I come in here because there's so much food on the table. I'm not going to, unfortunately, I'm not going to show the other two spaces because with the live stream, my bandwidth is a little bit too low to give you a clear view, but please explore through the show. The two spaces that I didn't show are surprising, exciting, heartwarming, scary, all of the above. So it's a real journey to kind of, I'm inside somebody's head. It's really oh, and I like honestly have to shout this out. Like, I don't mean to blow up Dawn's spot at all, but Dawn actually attended this ritual in person. And I believe he's in here somewhere. Oh, where did he go? Oh, there he is. He's over here. This is it's so funny. It reminds I was saying earlier when we were going through that it reminds me of like that PS1 Harry Potter game where they like have weird face textures. Oh, and there he is too. Don's in here with us virtually, and there's his 3D scan. That's so funny. I love that. I'm gonna go back to the lobby now, but please go check out. There's two more spaces that we didn't show, so definitely go and explore those. And I'm going to jump into the next room really quickly, but I think that I have some like a little bit of optimizing to do in here because it's going to run a little slow, and it's definitely going to run slow like on the live stream. Oh, it's not so bad. It's not so bad. This is Chiare Ribot and Chen Chen Yi's space based on two of their mixed reality works. This one is called Og. and it tells the story of a trans-Pacific deity that's born from underwater submarine fiber optic cables. And so this work is actually also posed in the Epoch Gallery show Replicants, which is currently on view if you go to epoch.gallery. And you can see this work kind of posed in a different context. And what's really cool about this work is that it's posed with its sister sculpture. This one is called Nikili. And this goddess is based on Hawaiian mythology, Hawaiian reverence for the ocean. We can see the Humu Humu Nuku Nuku Apua'a up there at the top, kind of floating. It's like right there. And what's cool about this is that these sculptures, one is in its native environment in Epoch Gallery. This sculpture is posed against the Hong Kong skyline. It's kind of a futuristic cyberpunk Hong Kong, where there is a submarine cable portal that carries data from Hawaii to Hong Kong. But Nikili is posed here in New Art City against the coastline of Oahu. Particularly, it's posed next to Kaena Point, which in Hawaiian Maoli, storytelling is the portal to souls, the gate to souls, I believe. And Tiara is going to kill me later. I'm going to see her tonight for butchering that. But it's a very spiritual place for Hawaiian people, and so it's really cool here to see our two shows connected to each other. I'm going to take you in a second to the Replicants show. I'll show you the portal and how you can access that show. But when the two shows are linked together and the two sister sculptures are posed, across the hyperlink. And so this is kind of our little homage to the story that Chan Chan Yi and Tiare are telling, and ways that we can think through interconnection, in different virtual spaces. So just jumping back to the lobby, let's go, Sammie, let's go and check out the Epoch Gallery show and kind of see what's going on over there. So Peter Wu Plus, who's the director and the founder of Epoch Gallery, built this portal, which kind of is in a traditional style of different public monuments and in Hong Kong and also in China. And so if you click on this portal, you'll get taken directly into, we need to fix the size. I see it's a little bit small right now. We're going to kind of, tidy it up a little bit. So still remastering. But if I click in here, can you still see? Oh yeah, it's loading. I can see my screen. That's great. You can enter the Replicants show. And I'm not going to tour through like too much because, I don't want to put too many words in Peter's mouth or in the mouth of the artist who created the show, as this is put together by a lot of people. But you can see we're in this, kind of cyberpunk, Blade Runner inspired Hong Kong. And there in the distance, you can see Og posed kind of in her own native environment. And you can see again, like the city skyline behind, and again, how these two sculptures are interconnected across different digital spaces. We also have work in this show, in the Replicant show, from another artist who's also in the Gray Area exhibition, and that's work by Kaken. And so if I click all the way through and move through this cityscape to the end, I arrive at their sculpture, which Peter created a custom kind of city, like a special cityscape and like lighting design around to pose. We also see work by Jennifer West here in the back, which is really beautiful. Yeah, I won't say too much more about that. Go and explore the show yourself. Everything has links here. There's tons of more information about each of the pieces. There's audio work and a soundtrack. It's just so rich and well developed. So please check out. I guess Diorama is kind of like 10 shows in one in that way. But moving back to the lobby space, we're right next to Sammie's own installation, because when we first conceptualized this show and I asked Sammie to come and architect it, I have been seeing the amazing work that Sammie's been doing over the past year at New Art City, and on top of guiding a whole community of artists and helping to keep the platform afloat, she's also been making her own artwork and making her own spaces here, which are incredible. So I also asked her if she'd be willing to contribute one of her own artworks to the show as well. And we can see the portal here. We've got this like absolutely fabulous abstract moving geometric diorama here. Oh, I jumped right in the portal, so we'll just go right in. And this is The Projected Observer is the name of this work. And there's a lot of really interesting aspects to this space. One being that, well, first of all, the entire show is has alt text. We've made alt text for all of the rooms and all of the sculptures in the lobby. We're still working on getting alt text up for every individual object that's uploaded. There's hundreds and hundreds of them. So, if anybody's using a screen reader out there or is in any way visually impaired, we're about 70% of the way there, but we're not totally there. And this experience will be fully accessible to you very, very soon. Sammy, are you still here? Oh, maybe Sammy's gone. That's okay.
I'm muted. I was just eating beef jerky and it was like...
Oh no, it's all good. I was like about to start talking about this, but I'd rather hear it from you.
Oh goodness. Artists should never talk about their art.
Artists should always be forced to talk about it, because by asking artists uncomfortable questions about their work, so much cool stuff comes out of it. So we'll see what we can synthesize today.
It's the longest I've ever taken to make a work of art. It sort of collapses my entire Blender journey. So if you look down at the floor, for example, like this texture is whack. It's all messed up. Because I didn't know what I was doing. I had a tree and I wanted to make a floor. I had this weird jumbled mass of vertices around the tree. I think I made the jumbled mass of vertices first and I stuck a tree in it. So I'm just trying to make a gallery that doesn't look shit. And over time I'm like, maybe I should put some art in here. And so the toilet came first. And you can see in the description, Don immediately was like, okay, the obligatory New Art City scary toilet. And then I made these little galleries that were, I don't know, I was a little more comfortable with them. I was playing with transparency and glass. And so inside of the gallery is, of course, a miniature of the gallery. And inside of those miniatures are yet more miniatures. So of course, it was a pleasure to do a show about recursion, because that's the thing that delights me most.
Whoa, you can see the model inside the model. It's
mm-hmm.
And after we're going to show you where this diorama is actually actualized in the show.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, it's diorama inside of diorama, and here's another diorama of the show that's inside of a diorama. So meta.
And so that little orb is actually also the sky. And so one of the things that I enjoyed was when you go into the opaque gallery, it's you sort of realize that walls in virtual space are more meant to occlude things than hold them up. And so it's sort of, there are works inside, but in order to see them, you have to go inside of the thing. And you have slits so you can see outside. But this orb in the center will begin to intersect the space. And so it's sort of intruding on itself. And it kind of when you go into the other room, there are these sort of slices of polygon that just go through the space and then tint the images that are behind it. But the images weren't there before, those came later. And then when you go out and look out the window, you can have your viewport just be totally taken over by this evolving shape. And each time you see it, it will be unique. It's a generative artwork in itself.
Oh my gosh, I love the teeny tiny toilet. I'm sorry. It's so cute.
I've got to miniaturize the flags too. But this is also sort of a game. There are environmental puzzles that you can get you to different places, and you have to in order to discover the videos that these were shot snapped from, you have to go through the tunnel. And if you want to see some of it's there are 4 different visual works that I installed sort of over the 6 months that I was working on it, and these are moments of reflection in my transition. I encourage you to read the exhibition statement. I don't know, it's not that prominently featured, but it explains my thoughts maybe more concisely.
It's a beautiful text, Sammie. And while you're talking about the text, I'd love to hear. I know that you have very, very intentionally made this space something that is accessible to people of all visual and hearing abilities. And I want to talk to you a little bit about how you design that and how you approach this idea of creating accessible online exhibitions for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, it's really a process, and it's like I can really see like how far it needs to come to be accessible in a way that I think is like as good as it should be. And like I'm really, really interested in making ways to make this to impart flavor both in the 3D and 2D environments. And we're like not quite there yet. We like the screen reader accessibility feature we have is like a bare minimum that like we generate an exhibition catalog, which we should be generating anyway, that can be read by screen readers. But it, like from a user perspective, I give it like a D-. It's like it has so much work that needs to happen. And so like we have a commitment to it, but like I think it's really important to state that we're like not there. So one of the ways I tried to solve for specifically vision impairment in this space is to make it so each of your number keys take you to each of the piece, like the things that I would consider a piece that are installed in the gallery. And in each of those places, there are also collages of sound in stereo that are basically doing the same thing the visual pieces are doing. They're like collapsing time, they're pulling things out of my archive, and they're also my current way of processing my identity, right? And so you move slowly between the different places so you can hear the sound change. And one of the things that needs to be added here is at each of those waypoints, I'm going to add a voiceover, which doesn't necessarily do the patronizing, like try to describe every single thing you see in the frame, and instead sort of offer like some moments of sincere reflection with the space, which is like something that I think is equally desirable for sighted and non-sighted people. And I think this is really like philosophically the way that we want to approach accessibility in New Art City, not as an afterthought, but as a core feature.
Absolutely. It has to be. And, I've learned, just in creating the show, I learned so much from you about how to create alt text and, what it means. And I had so much, I've always struggled with that because I'm an extremely visual person, and I'm a very visual person. I'm also sight impaired. But you know, it was such a valuable exercise to have to describe what something is in order to give somebody a window into it without showing them a picture.
And when I was writing the alt text, that was kind of my approach, that like these are, because it was especially interesting for the images where like it's pretty abstract, but like the salient feature of the image is like my eye, see, like looking at myself into the camera through the distortion, right? Like the meaning exists in a third space outside the artifact itself. And so I try to sort of make it this evolving poem where I am describing the elements, but like listening to it lets you see the story. And if you're sighted, you have to figure out how to use a screen reader, and you have to see how much it sucks to use one.
Yeah, absolutely. And also engage other senses to fully comprehend what this space is all about.
Yeah, I shouldn't say it sucks. It's like orality renders in time, right? So like there's no option, like text renders visually for us, right? So you see it as an image, but when you listen to it, it's necessarily durational. So it's like inviting you to sit with the place in the same way that the exhibition tries to.
Absolutely. Oh, this is so beautiful. I want to just hang out under the banyan tree for forever. But there's so many fun little surprises and secrets and little things that are random. This is a generative piece. The shapes and the shaders and the different refractions are constantly shifting. And so everybody gets a slightly different experience. And there's really so many moments for serendipity that make themselves that kind of present themselves to you as this show unfolds. Really honored to show this work, Sammie. It's so fun.
Thank you for letting me talk.
And I mean, more than that too, I mean, I love the still image works that you have in there as well, because that's a part of your, I'm so familiar with your 3D work. I'm not as familiar with your photographic or your still image or even your moving image work. So that was like a really nice, entry point into some of the other things that you're thinking of beyond just designing spaces, in this show. Since we're right here, the next room I want to jump into is Kaken's room. And this room is called Wisdoms for Love 3.0, based on the video game of the same title created by Kaken. And we basically tried to recreate a scene from their film Metaverse, We Are at the End of Something. And this scene also replicates itself in the work Wisdoms for Love 3.0. Essentially, what to describe before I get into too much of the plot, which I think you kind of just have to like watch and experience for yourself. I don't want to say too much, but this work, the game work Wisdoms for Love 3.0, which you can access through clicking the video. You'll be taken to the game, and you can play through it. Again, this is just a portal into a larger world. We wanted to recreate a set from the game to give it, again, a diorama of the larger world. And in the video behind, you can see some moments from this world as captured, in the film piece that accompanies it. And there's so much lore that's involved in this show. I mean, this character that you see before you is the Divine Mother, and what she's giving birth to in her transparent womb is difficult conversations. She's holding a teardrop that says truth. And each of these knives that are a key part of the lore that come from this world of Wisdoms for Love 3.0 are here, kind of floating and slowly rotating over this endless ocean that we've presented. Say a little bit about the plot, Wisdoms for Love 3.0 is a video game work that imagines a world where, specifically related to cryptocurrency, a world where we're trading in a Web 3.0 future, a world where we're trading in love and in wisdom rather than in financial instruments, and where the value comes from exchanging wisdom and building connection. And it's kind of their somewhat utopian, dystopian, vision for the future and what that might look like. Beyond that, I think accompanying this work, there are over 80 individual tokens that will be released by a transfer gallery. There is a film piece. There is another film piece from which the smaller film piece is derived from. There's, as we obviously a video game. There is so many rich access points into this work, and that's really what Kaken is all about. Is they create worlds, and so their work is kind of squidgy and doesn't necessarily fit into the nice, neat categories that other kinds of artwork do. But that's because what they're doing is building worlds, and the products from those worlds are what you see here as videos, as 3D sculptures, as immersive environments, and as games. There's just a couple more, speaking of games, the next space that I want to show is Jeremy Couillard, who is a game designer. And he basically, most of his games are available on itch.io, so you can search him, Jeremy Couillard, on itch, and I hope one of my colleagues will drop this in the chat. And he basically came and he brought a bunch of different elements from many different game works of his to create these mini dioramas of those games, but also to create a new narrative entirely its own. So we see some different elements, like this little deer guy, a guy being gender neutral, of course. We've got this little hanging from the tree creature. But throughout, there's different things that, there's different pieces of text, which now I can't find it. I know there's like a piece of text somewhere around here that kind of tell a narrative and kind of point into the absurdist world that, Jeremy is creating. Here we have some of the text, for example, and we have a little, character, this kind of rat or mouse person, sitting on the stairs. Also, I should mention that interspersed throughout the piece are these small video works, or I guess they might even be GIFs. But these moving image pieces show the development of Long Island City, New York over time. And so these are different screenshots from Google Earth or Google Maps Street View showing how Long Island City in New York has changed. This is where Jeremy works, and he's seen over the years how it has totally transformed and kind of how absurd and isolating the new construction has been. And so his work really explores the absurd, the crazy, the ugly, the scary, all of it kind of coming together, and how painful and ridiculous but also beautiful life is. I think that this like whimsical kind of Rube Goldberg sort of contraption here kind of points that out. It's like it's complicated but silly, and a little bit nonsensical. And I think that's kind of an ethos that carries through Jeremy's work, in which he speaks to how he approaches creating worlds, by pointing out these moments of absurdity or creating satire. There's really core points of reflection that can be made. And then again, within that, we've got these like really nice little scenes. And this is my favorite part of the whole show. This is my favorite part of the whole piece. In this bedroom, we've got the deer on the bed. We have the hanging character from the ceiling. And of course, this iconic quote, "Can you imagine Karl Marx taking a shit and looking at Reddit on his phone?" And I think that this just perfectly encapsulates that feeling of absurdity that is confronting us in life. And we were talking a little bit earlier about how this moment in time, as we're still in the throes of pandemic, as it's the globally, it's politically very unstable. We're having all of these wild problems, and the world just seems a bit absurd. And I think that this just speaks so presciently to what we're going through. The fact that like if any of these great thinkers were alive today, they would prod that we kind of uphold and laud and think through, that they would be doing the same dumb stuff as us, like taking a shit and looking at Reddit on their phones. This is a really fun room because there's so many little surprises and secrets and Easter eggs hidden throughout. This is a really lovely scene here on the stage. And over up above here, there's so many different little pieces to this. You can see it's quite expansive. And here we've got one of my other favorite parts of this room, this kind of like dinosaur cow creature in this little house sticking his head out the window. And if you zoom in and go into his butthole, we've got this little character with a sweater on that just says, I'm going to try to get closer, it's kind of hard. This little sweater that just says depression on it. And I think, little dude in a depression sweatshirt sitting in a cow's butthole, like there's something about that I can't describe, but that feels so visceral. You totally get the feeling that he's trying to engender in the audience. Finally, at the top of this staircase, we have a witch in a pool floating on a floaty, but the pool is another one of Jeremy's studies of the transformation of Long Island City in New York. But his games, this is just kind of again, a diorama of something much larger. You can go to itch.io and search Jeremy Couillard to find all of his game works that are available. They're super inexpensive. They're extremely engaging. They're beautiful. They're narrative. And each of them kind of creates its own, universe in doing so. Over here, second to last, we have a room by Oria Harvey and Rodell Warner. And their piece is called Stellarium. And they actually, as I was talking about a little bit earlier, they actually collaborated in building this space. So they originally had their own ideas about what they wanted to show, and they came into this space together and they started collaborating. And this is what kind of came out with it. They totally changed their plan and they co-constructed this kind of this contained yet infinite stellarium where we have some of the rotating plant sculptures by Rodell Warner, which have become extremely emblematic of his practice lately, as well as these lovely star children that create kind of the background. And Oria also created this the container, this crystalline structure which hosts all of the pieces. And it's hypnotic, and you float through, and it's this space for contemplation and for rest. There's constant motion, but it's not sickening or distracting. It's quite meditative. So this is another space that I invite folks to come and experience. Both Oria and Rodell are thinking about hypermateriality, about creating objects that serve as expanded internet art, that exist as multiple material forms at once, that span different media environments, that span different physical environments. And this is just such a nice way of looking into both of the things that they're thinking about. Finally, we have one last room in the show before we break and start our after party in the video lounges. I want to show this piece over here by Lajine McMillan and Joey Holder. And this is a work that Dawn worked really hard on. Basically, Joey's film, Abyssal Seeker, exists as a Blender file. And so we decided, okay, this is meant to be witnessed as a two-dimensional thing, but what if we blew up all the elements and expanded them into 3D? And so we took the underwater cave that the film piece creates, and we turned it 3D. We made it physical and made it possible for people to move around it. So if you watch Joey's piece Abyssal Seeker, which is linked if you click on any of these kind of creature sculptures, you can go and you can watch the piece and kind of see what it is, and then from in here you can kind of experience it from the inside. And it was a really amazing and this is kind of expanding off of Joey's practice of fringe biology and research into the biological sciences and different kinds of creatures, and looking through scientific research as a means of art production. She's thinking about creatures that live on the bottom of the ocean. We've got this kind of like huge mouth like snake creature floating past. If you can see that, I know it's a little bit dark. It'll come through again. He floats around. And yeah, we wanted to make that something that was immersive. And it also, because Joey's work is extremely immersive, she does these unbelievable installations in different places around the world that incorporate sculpture and video and image and all these different things. And lucky as we would have it, LaJunae McMillan, who we're seeing on screen before us from her her movement portrait series, she often, when she does virtual installations, most notably at Synthesis Gallery recently, often poses her work in underwater caves or in these kind of cave environments with water on the floor. And so we were like, this is amazing, because Joey's work is basically the perfect stage for this work. This is where it is meant to be witnessed. And so it was just a really nice bit of symmetry there. This piece is coming again from LaJunae's movement portrait project, where she worked with dancers to 3D scan them and their movement in order to archive, preserve, and care for Black movement as a digital artifact. This is something that is often not preserved. Black movement is something that's appropriated and misconstrued. And so this project really resists that, and also manifests as these unbelievable Unreal Engine rendered movement studies, which you can see in here. That's most of the show. I don't want to say too much more. I want audience members to go in, kind of experience it for yourself. But if you have any questions, feel free to, let us know. We'd love to chat to you about them. Over here in the kind of sculpture garden area, we have a 3D scanned sugar mill from Valencia James, who performed this week. We have a sculpture from Sister Lady Bianca, who spoke earlier today. There are some elements from Huntress's performance, which is going to be happening this Tuesday. We haven't posed the final sculpture here yet because the performance hasn't happened. And we also have this work, which is called Ultraviolet Recapitulation by Tabitha Rozier. These works all have very rich narratives, and rather than tell you about them, I invite you to come and learn about the stories yourself. And I think that's about a wrap. I think I went a bit over time and wanted to show off the show.